Thank you. At this point, I would entertain a motion to, for an approval of the agenda. Moved by Rebecca, Commissioner Grimm, seconded by Kathy Chason. Are there any amendments to the agenda? One or two things I knew about, I guess we got corrected before they came on. Rebecca?
This may just be semantics, but I believe there are 2 personnel matters for executive session. Correct, Jeannie?
I believe so.
Yeah, technically, I mean, when we make the motion, I mean, it's on here, we should say the motion for 2 personnel matters, if that's the
It
case.
is a motion that you have to actively make, so you don't
Yeah,
need to amend the agenda.
right. Okay. Kathy, yeah.
Do we want to move this curriculum committee motion up so that people wait for it? There are people here.
The question is about moving the curriculum committee report higher up on the agenda, or at least the motion in large part because there may be public here who are affected or may be commenting on that.
Well, is that a motion?
It's a possible amendment.
Okay.
Would you suggest moving it up to, after the superintendent's?
There's nobody here.
Okay, we'll leave it as no amendment. Liz?
If by moving the consent agenda, it moves item 2B, I would like to request a explanation of this.
Okay.
As a new board member,
yeah,
it's unfamiliar
yeah.
to me, and I wouldn't be able to vote on the consent agenda without understanding it.
Right, I think that the approach then would be, when we go and have a motion for the consent agenda, the next would be basically to have the item removed from the consent agenda. We would then remove it from the consent agenda, it would become a separate vote, which could be debated. So that would be that's the approach to take to that.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion about the agenda, all in favor of the agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. First item on the agenda for the evening is public comment. As many of you who have been here before know, this is a time for the public, any member of the public, whether it be staff, general public, students, to comment to the board. It's not a time at which the board responds directly or engages in debate with the public, but it is a time during which we can take input and hear from the public. At times, we will make some comments post in the board reflection time at this point. So I don't have a current listing or a sign up for anyone who was looking to make comment in public comment time. So that being said, if anyone would like to comment during public comment session, please come forward to the microphones in the center and introduce yourself, and you would have the floor.
Hi, most of you know me by now. Barbara Hedrick, Ward 6, son in 9th grade at VHS. So first I'd like to thank everybody for your very hard work at the last board meeting, where you were very collaborative in finding the right words to indicate your intent to restore athletics and co-curricular programs. Just want to personally thank you very much for your hard work through that. And for Ben Truman and Meredith King for working through that. I thought that was great leadership. I also want to say hooray and thank you to Miriam Stoll, because you wanted to get it done right then. And I was like, yes, you can do it right then if you wanted to. Because I remember at a December 5th Finance Committee meeting, the central office accountant, Robert, I forget his last name, but everybody knows him, said that healthcare premiums for fiscal year 14 You budgeted 14%, but the healthcare premiums are only going to cost the school district 11%. So there's actual savings in the 2014 school year, fiscal year, of $157,000. So you can take that $157,000 and use a portion of it to totally restore the budget. So when you're getting updates from Superintendent Collins in each month, think about the fact that you already know you have that savings, and if you want to get it done, like Marion was suggesting now, you can use that $157,000 over budgeted health care premium expense and use it to restore the budget for athletics and co-curriculars. So just think about that as you're getting your monthly updates. Maybe we can close this issue and confirm it now. There was something else that came up in the meeting, and that was everyone was surprised that the public didn't know that co-curriculars and athletics were going to be cut by 15%. And I have two suggestions. Because in the budget, there are separate categories for co-curriculars, and there's a separate budget for athletics. Those are separate subcategories. Refer to them specifically rather than just lumping them all as co-curriculars. And then next year, when you do the budget, try to get all the information out in January and make sure your latest copy of the report is posted on the website, because the latest copy was never posted on the Burlington website. It was only in the clerk and treasurer's office, which nobody knows to go get out of clerk and treasurer's because they think what's on the website is the latest copy. And then one last thing from last month's discussion is everybody was talking about trade-offs. Well, if we restore money to athletics and co-curriculars, where are we going to take it out of? And Superintendent Collins said, you know, every dollar spoken for. And some examples indicated how students would hurt if we took money here or out of here, out of here. But I think the central budget is the place that we need to look to find savings. And probably you need some extra eyes to look at that. Because I know right now Jeannie's tasked with looking at finding savings, but that's her budget, and I would just like the board to get involved in looking at what are the overheads in the central budget. So, for example, I'll give you two examples and then I'm done. Many years ago, there was a modest salary paid to somebody to find substitute teachers. So when a teacher called in sick, somebody had to get on the phone and call a bunch of people and say, will you fill in today? Now we hire an outside vendor to do that, and it's much, much more expensive. So maybe there's some savings there. Two, I think we really need to look at international travel. You know, are we paying for administrators to go on international travel? Is that really appropriate? Should we be cutting back and having savings there? That's my thing. I just want to thank you again very, very much.
Thank you as well. Anyone else from the public?
No worries. Good evening, everyone. Kyle Dodson. I wanted to just talk about observations as a community member around our continued efforts around just ensuring the highest quality experience educationally for our students, which is very much impacted by our hiring and how we go about that in the process. And in that, I'm looking at what I see as a pattern of interim hires. And I think that the interim hiring practice is problematic, and least so because we don't have high quality internal people. We do. But I believe that a number of our goals are perhaps undermined when we do that. And everything that I know about best practices would suggest that that's to be avoided. At Champlain, when we get an interim candidate, they actually sign on, they cannot be part of the hiring process. They are there for a year, and they're not able to enter the process regardless of their qualifications, et cetera. So the idea, I think, is to get the widest pool possible. and to really, as a district, understand that one of your greatest leverage points is the hiring process. We visited a school. I was looking here. I don't think anyone here was there, but some folks from IAA and myself, some Champlain folks, visited this high-performing school in West Hartford. And at that school, they interview 60 people for a given position. And that's just an indication of their commitment. And as a result, their tenure, the people staying and the quality of what they do is really high because they know that when you have that opening, it's a golden opportunity. It doesn't require getting rid of someone. You don't have to spend extra dollars. You pay them the same scale as everyone else, but there's a real range of people that you might put in that position, and maximizing what you put in that position really is an incredible leverage point. And with us, another challenge is that if we hire internally, given that I may have the statistics wrong, you guys can help me out, but 96 to 97% white at the faculty level, it almost guarantees that we won't get diverse candidates. At least that's the math that I see it. If we hire someone who's here, the odds are really powerful that it will not help us to achieve that goal. So that alone, by not opening it up really widely and digging really deep and trying to get a pool that gives us a chance to hit that priority and other priorities. STEM folks, men at the elementary school level, SPED folks, ELL folks. We have a number of hiring priorities that at that point of hire, it doesn't cost us extra. You can get dual qualification. You know, when I was a principal in Boston, even if it wasn't a SPED position, we tried to hire someone with SPED qualifications. If it's not an ELL position, you can still hire because lots of people are dual and sometimes triple certified. So it's that leverage point. And once again, as I watch and see, it just feels to me like we're not maximizing the opportunity. And I know there's money and time, but those things are never going away. You know, those challenges are going to be with us. And if we are true to the commitment, I believe we need to really step back and think about how we're taking advantage of the openings that do occur to meet some of our highest priorities. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank the public. I know we have down board reflection on this. I know this is something that every once in a while people saying, I don't know quite what we're doing it, but I will leave it there if anyone wanted to make any particular comments at this point. Seeing none, I would move on to the section of the board report, which is the board report. And the first thing I guess I would like to do tonight is to thank and bid farewell to a few people who have been with us for a period of time. First off, Christina Mansell, who has been our minute taker for approximately a year. I jokingly said to her that she just fired us, but she did say that she's headed back to Texas, and that's a pretty tough commute for this on a Tuesday night once a month. So while we're disappointed to see you go, I wish you the best as you move on. So thank you for being part of us for a period of time here. Oh yeah.
It was the resolution last week that put you over the end.
Right. Getting the language correct on the resolution. And then we every year we have 2 student members who are on the school board. And in fact, this past year, we reworked our policy of student representation on the school board. At which point, one of the major changes is that the student votes are now recorded, and they're not just part of the conversation, but the student votes are in fact recorded. Although they are not part of the vote of the school board, it is recorded in the record as to how they vote, which is a significant, into the minutes, which is a significant change. And, you know, the 2 students who are members this year were part of rewriting this. Peter Lane over on my right, Emily Lansky over here on the left, have both been very active members, Peter being involved in infrastructure and technology primarily, and Emily primarily in diversity and equity on the committee side, but also been very active and thoughtful contributors to the debates during the evening, especially as they related to student issues. And Yeah, it'll take the whole thing here. And I guess, so what I would like to do is present both of you with the infamous, as they say on Jeopardy, parting gifts. But, you know, and so there's no, you know, there's no mediocre trip to somewhere, but what we do have are the apples with the school bell underneath them. And I would like to wish you both the best. Both of you are graduating seniors and heading off to, both heading off to college, and really look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Thanks. I would really like, Peter just expressed to me that he would like to say a couple words, and first I'd like to let Peter and Emily speak if they like, and then it looked like Aaron wanted to say something as well. So Peter.
Well, to say that this has been an amazing experience would be the understatement of the year. Being part of this is, you know, most people would say, oh, 120 hours of meetings. No. But it's just been amazing to be part of the process, to be part of the discussion, to see how this works. Because usually, you know, as a student, you're like, oh, this is a school board. They hand the budget from down on high, and it just descends upon us. And suddenly, you know, the freshmen have iPads, and no one knows how they got there. But it's been amazing to be part of the process and to be part of these discussions. Last year, we had all these discussions about race and how we were going to fix the problems that we had, and we're obviously still working on that, but it was just incredible to be part of that experience and fixing, or starting to fix, everything there. And, you know, committee meetings and that one MPA meeting, which was very strange, but other than that, it's just been an amazing experience. It's easily been one of my favorite extracurricular activities that I've done in high school, and I'm so incredibly grateful for this experience. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Peter.
I also just want to say a huge thank you. This has been, I would say, one of the most educational pieces of all of my high school experience, in addition to, you know, classes and the whole school thing. But it's really changed my thinking around what I want to do with my life and career and politics and education. And last year was amazing, this year was amazing, but I just specifically want to thank you guys for being so incredibly welcoming and ready to answer all of my questions. And I have a lot of people, when I talk about being on the school board, ask, well, like, do they respect your opinion? Like, do they listen to you? And I couldn't have asked for like a more receptive audience. Like, you guys, it was never an issue that like we were students. It was just, you're on the board, we want to hear from you, and that was really appreciated. So thank you guys for making this a wonderful experience.
Great. Thank you as well. And while we're on the subject, next year's student representatives are both here this evening. If you guys want to stand, Henry Prine, who will be a senior next year, and Xander Long, who will be a junior next year, will be the two student representatives as well. So officially we welcome you next month, but an informal welcome tonight. And one final farewell tonight is going out to Terry Bailey, who, as Director of Operations, has pretty much been responsible for just about, at one time, just about anything you can imagine, because Terry really has been working very closely with Jeannie and has taken the lead role on many things where Jeannie has delegated and passed on responsibility to Terry. He's worked very closely with almost every committee at one time or another, and he's been a key mover on several major events going on in the district, one of which in particular is still going on. And So I think that Terry's mark on this district will be something that I think as we look back will be well remembered for many reasons and all good. So Terry, it's again been great working with you as we've been on the board. I think your contributions to the district will be long lasting. And for you too, we give you our Apple Bell here in recognition for your service in the district.
August of 1974, I was the paid staff member that attended my first school board member. And I think about the school board meeting in August of 1974 was when I became a central office administrator. And if I could hang in there one more year, I'd have been at it for 40 years. Think about that. But I will be seeing you again in a little more limited capacity, so you haven't totally gotten rid of me. I'm looking forward to that as we are doing that too. It's been great. The Vermont experience, you know, I'm an old Vermonter. I've been here 2 centuries, 1999 I do very much appreciate all the support, the great opportunity. I'm grateful for being a part of our community. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to be, Burlington, Vermont. Thank you very much.
And you will still be a justice of the peace in Burlington, correct? There we go. Okay.
And a resident.
And a resident, of course, yes. I think that finishes up what I wanted to say on the board from the chair's report. Aaron, you had raised your hand at one point. And
yeah, no, yeah, I'm happy to still say it. I was just going to say to both Emily and Peter, you know, as a high school teacher, it's been really inspirational to work with 2 such intelligent young people, and although their votes haven't counted in the main vote, I certainly was swayed and voted certain ways based on both of your opinions. So just good luck. I know it's a crazy time right now. It's stressful, anxious, scared, lots of emotions, but you guys are going to be fine, and you're always welcome back here, and hopefully we'll see you around here. So yeah, thanks. That was all.
good, thank you. Did anyone else have any other comments they wanted to make during board report time?
Oh, well, and Terry, we'll miss you too.
Don't know how to follow that. I'd like to move on to the superintendent's report. Jeannie?
I'm really pleased tonight to give you an updated diversity report, Diversity, Our Gift and Our Future. Unfortunately, because we are at City Hall and I didn't have control over all the setups, I can't show the brief PowerPoint on the screen, but the report, the Gantt chart closing out last year, the Gantt chart for the coming year, and a PowerPoint presentation is available on board docs for those of you with a computer tonight and those of you who wish to go home and see it at any other time. And I'll just speak to it as we go through a very brief report. So this is the second iteration of Diversity, Our Gift and Our Future, and this plan is, the first iteration was adopted by the board in the board strategic plan last October 2012. And is largely, the original plan was largely based on the work of the Diversity Task Force that the board appointed previously, as well as some additional research that was done in-house. The plan, Diversity, Our Gift and Our Future, is designed to measure the progress that was made in the past year, articulate some of the challenges that we faced in trying to meet the goals that were set for the past year, and to chart a course for the year and years ahead. So that's the layout of the plan. Last year, we identified 5 key areas for change. This year, we have increased that to 6 key areas that will be key levers for closing the opportunity and access gaps, particularly for students of color, new Americans, students with learning differences, and those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. One of the key levers is creating a welcoming climate for all students, building school environments that enable students to feel known, heard, appreciated, and including an annual climate survey and new policies that address racism and bullying more directly. And since you can't see the screen, I'll just pick a couple of those highlights. There were new policies that you put in place last year that addressed racism, equity, and bullying more directly. We established an African and African-American male support group under the leadership of Mr. Sparks. We trained over 900 adults in harassment and bullying procedures and responses, and solidified a more formal complaint process, including reaching out to parents through PTOs to make sure that parents knew about it. Again, there were challenges in this, but right now I'm just giving you the highlights. The organizational change was another key lever, and the creation of a leadership team, creating and defining clear roles for addressing issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and developing a more robust data collection and evaluation framework. In particular, we created the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Community Partnerships, and I see that office represented here tonight with Mr. Sparks, Nikki Fuller, Linda Walsleben, and the position that was vacated when we lost Dan Ballon, which will be filled this coming summer. We did begin to establish a sense of a team, something that didn't exist previously in this district. A lot of this work was carried on the back of one person, and one of the recommendations that came through the task force is it needs to be more than one person. This is about the entire district, this is about all of our students, and we need a greater focus for sustainability and a team to work on that. We have been working on developing a more robust data collection and evaluation framework, again, drawing on best practices from across the country, and did issue our first annual equity report card. And we said when we issued it, it's still going to grow. It was our first, but our first is a first step towards a long road of identifying what our needs are and what we need to do, and to measure whether or not we are actually making progress. A third lever was professional development, providing the space for targeted conversations and opportunities to address and confront unconscious biases and inequitable responses. I feel that this area made significant progress this year. There were targeted weekly conversations in schools, or monthly conversations in schools and among central office staff. There was we kicked off the summer in June and through August with some significant professional development for the administrators, utilizing Bill Howe from the Connecticut Department of Education, as well as Washington Consulting, who stayed with us throughout the year and will continue with us for at least another year. We partnered with the Echo Center for their Science on Race, Are We So Different? And we had over 1,600 faculty, staff, and students go through the Echo Center exhibit and have discussions, not just walk through and see, but really engage and interact with that exhibit. And we kicked off the school year once again with Paul Gorski of Ed Change in the Multicultural Pavilion to set the tone at the very beginning. Our plan is to continue those conversations and get deeper into them with more guidance on what those conversations will be. Another lever was our affirmative recruitment and retention area. We did bolster our recruitment and retention policies. Cultural competence remains a requirement of our hiring processes, and under Nikki Fuller, we revised or in the process of revising, she's shaking her head, but we did revise our training around affirmative hiring processes that CIE put in place for us, and then Nikki took over and revised it so that it could be even more specific to the hiring processes themselves. We have significantly increased our ELL supports and our work with our Parents for Change, New American Parents, and the commitments that we made there, and also have had a significant focus on parent and community engagement. And our goal under affirmative recruitment and retention is to ensure a diverse faculty and staff so that all students see people like themselves in leadership roles, clarifying the importance of cultural competence at all levels. All students are culturally competent as they enter a global workforce, and that we bolster our recruitment and retention policies. A lever that we are adding this year, or segregating out because it was kind of mixed in with others last year, is the multicultural curriculum and ELL supports area. And in this area this year, we began mapping the curriculum to identify pockets of excellence and determine the need for more systemic improvements. We created and piloted multicultural units for grades 1, 2, and 5 to start with. We clarified our religious observances policies. We implemented the travels course to help teachers instruct ELL students in the classroom. And we have content specialists in English language learners now assisting classroom teachers to modify content for different levels of need. And this area is intended to intentionally map and redesign the curriculum to reflect a variety of racial and cultural perspectives and support new American students in ways that are culturally and linguistically sensitive. In this area, we also requested the Alliance at Brown University to review our ELL programs. We have not yet released that review, although we have received it, because at the moment we're working on the next steps from it, and it will come out as part of a revised strategic plan in ELL, so we'll watch for it very shortly. We surveyed the middle and high school students about the extent of teacher support and the beliefs within the system. We did make commitments for Parents for Change in November. We have had a couple of quarterly meetings with another one coming up next Monday, and we're working our way through those commitments with the new American parents. And one thing that was really exciting that I keep hearing from people in the district about is that we actually co-located all of our multilingual liaisons at the high school in one space and increased the amount of supports and training that we're providing our multilingual liaisons, which has been a nice plus. A sixth area is parent and community engagement, implementing the family school partnerships in all schools with a focus on increasing student achievement, intentional outreach to parents, especially those who have felt or have been marginalized. Again, the training and support for multilingual liaisons is under this category. The equity director has met with PTOs to share information on harassment and bullying, and working with Parents for Change on their efforts to organize parents. And our goal in this area is to reach out to all parents with greater care to the parents who have felt marginalized or have been marginalized by our system, ensuring that the assets of the entire community is brought on behalf of all students, especially those who have lacked that access. To this end, I also met most recently last week with a group of students that Mr. Sparks pulled together. Xander Long was part of that group. And Emily Lansky was part of that group and helped lead the discussion, actually, and continue to hear the concern from our African American students that they don't feel their voices are heard as loudly as other voices are heard. So we do continue to hear that concern, which brings me to some of our challenges that are still ahead of us. We do need to hire a director of diversity education and engagement. We do feel that one of our challenges this year is with the loss of Dan Ballon and having a particular person in that position to lead our conversations. The conversations were not as rich the second half of the year as they were the first half of the year. And we do need to have that position with somebody focused on helping the schools, helping teachers, faculty, staff, and students have those conversations, which are really difficult to have. Also, more remaining challenges are increasing our involvement of students in school climate issues so that students are taking on leadership roles. That was part of the discussion that we had last week with students. And opening up more spaces for student conversation and greater student voice. And what has really significantly come up are some of the adult climate issues that exist within our district. And we are currently undergoing a climate survey to get kind of a baseline of where our adult climate issues are so that we can support that. That's a really brief overview of a 35-page report. I did promise Alan that you would go home by a decent hour tonight. So the entire report is available on, again, on Board Docs. It will be on our website probably by the end of the day tomorrow. The full Gantt chart that says what was going to be done this year is on there and updated, and what's going to be done in the coming year is on there and ready to be updated. And it is my hope that we will delve into this report further in our Diversity Equity Committee, but that agenda hasn't been set yet. But I think that would be an appropriate place to dig into it even deeper. And so I'm really pleased to bring that to you tonight.
Could we take some questions here in case, before we move on to other topics? Yeah. Did anyone have questions at this point? Miriam.
Mine is more of a comment, Jeannie, and I know I'm new to this whole effort, but I was really struck by how little there was addressing the issues of students with disability in this report. In particular, when I looked at the Gantt charts, there was virtually no direct action that had to do with inclusion of students with disability, which I was disappointed by. And I think as I go through the entire, the different areas that you have and how you're approaching each, I feel like that there hasn't been a planful thought around how children with disability and their needs do and must fit into this strategic plan regarding equity. So I'm not sure how to address it. I have a list of particular concerns, but it's really more a general framework. And I guess my question is, how can we ensure that we integrate those ideas into here? And I guess, why it hasn't been done till now. I'd like to say one thing, which is that I have at certain times before I was on the board brought up these issues in various places. One of the people I brought them up to early on was Dan Ballon, who was, we all know him. He had a very wide viewpoint about the world. But even in sitting down with him, it was new to him to think about diversity as being included in the conversations regarding race and culture. And I appreciated his openness. There used to be a committee here in the district that was for special education parents. It petered out. I would love to see that either restarted or integrated, better yet, integrated into this effort. So I guess that's my comment. I would be interested if anyone else has concerns about it, or maybe how I can go about pushing this forward, since I'm not on the Diversity and Equity Committee. I am on the Curriculum Committee, and I think there are pieces of this that make sense there as well. But
Can I make a brief comment on that?
Yeah.
So the history of this really, and there were many, many board discussions and community discussions about how broad to bring this, because you're correct, inclusion is much broader than race. And yet, there was a decision that was made early on that we are focused on the inequities due to race that occur in this district. That said, our annual inclusion and equity report does include disabilities in looking at the data and setting the goals from where we're doing, where we need to make changes. And you just triggered a thought to me that I'll bring back to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Community Partnerships about the role of disabilities even within that office. For example, I have Linda Walsleben as the director of ELL, sitting on a teaching and learning team, but participating in DECP, and perhaps that's one of the places that I can immediately think of doing. But I will say that this report, you're correct, it's more focused on race than it is disabilities.
But I want to go beyond that, because the introduction does not indicate that, and that's not the way it's been put out to the community to this point. I'd like to follow up on something that Kyle Dodson said, where he said, when you hire someone, you don't have to hire someone who just fits the qualifications. You can look for someone who has other qualifications that dovetail it. And I would love to see Dr. Ballon's replacement be someone who not only understood diversity and race, but also understood special education and inclusion. So I would put that out too, that I really think we as a district need to do that. And if this is really about race and ethnicity and not about special education or sexual orientation, I think that needs to be clear, because in your introduction you do make some broad statements. So those should either be changed or we need to integrate it into the report. Okay. And my preference would be the latter.
Jill?
Actually, Patrick had his hand up first.
Okay, Patrick.
I just wanted to pick up on something that Miriam was saying, and that to me there are kind of two parallel tracks that I see the value of this. And Miriam's comment helps me to frame this. One, there's kind of a moral issue that we're dealing with here, and whether it be looking at kids in special education for inclusion, whether we're looking at race, ethnicity, that's a moral issue and something that we have the responsibility to take on. The second thing is an issue of truly serving all of our students. And this is where we see the value of inclusion, where we see the value of having smart conversations and difficult conversations about race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever our definition of marginalized might be. Because that doesn't benefit just those people on the margins, it benefits all of the students. And that's why, to me, bringing inclusion, special education, in this case, into that is essential this is for the value of this for every single student, which is why this is that second parallel track, is they are becoming, they're at a spot where they can engage smartly in conversations that the real world is going on, understand difference, and that is what makes Burlington schools a unique place, that has the potential for making Burlington schools a unique place in the state of Vermont, and something that we not only have the responsibility to embrace, but this incredible opportunity to embrace, which is, thank you for saying that, Miriam.
Jill?
I had two things. One, sort of in response to what you said, Miriam, which I also agree, is that the task force that was originally formed was specific to race, but through the conversations in the task force and then in the diversity and equity subcommittee, there was a recognition that it went far beyond race. And in fact, the policy that we adopted last year in October actually defines
It's in the report if you're looking for it.
well, I have right here, diversity is expressed through race, ethnicity, class, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, religion, national origin, immigration status, language background, language proficiency, and family structure. So, I mean, I think that supports the work that we need to do to talk about inclusion and equity for all students with all differences. And then, Jeannie, I just had a question. Oh shoot, I think I just closed the same policy. The policy that we adopted last year actually said that you would prepare your report and bring it to the board at the beginning of the school year. I haven't had a chance to even look at it today, but I was just curious why the timeline.
Because last year's report was written June to June, and while certainly we could work on it over the summer, it felt important. A lot of the work towards next school year needs to happen over the summer. If I wait to finalize the report in September, I will have lost 3 months of preparation. We'd be, preparing for something that's done as opposed to preparing for the school year. And there's a lot of work happening starting next week at the administrative retreat on this work for next school year.
So maybe that's the difference, because I thought that there was a building administrator retreat in August.
There's one in June and one in August. And
I thought that those were part of what we thought was going to be developing the strategic plan.
this report starts now and goes through next school year. The strategic plan is already in existence and is revisited each year at the June and August retreat. But again, even that work has to start in June because there's a lot that has to happen in the summer prior to the start of the school year. August is too late. But there is the academic strategic plan, which includes diversity and equity, is that.
Okay. Meredith, and then Liz.
How far up does this have to be? I just want to also clarify, all of your points are valid, and I just want to clarify, going way back to when this conversation first started on the board when I came on like 4 years ago, I think part of what was going on in our community here and in our school district is there was this recognition that our demographics are dramatically changing, and perhaps all of us white people weren't ready for that. And so I think that that's kind of what came out of, the conversations, I think, occurred in that way, unfolded. And they're still difficult conversations to have. But the way, we've consulted a lot of experts along the way, and part of how it all is supposed to work is that as you're talking about, I think Patrick sort of touched on this, as you're talking about one issue and one marginalized group, then you're sort of expanding that, and the policies and procedures you come up with are to benefit everyone in the long run. And just like when you're improving your hiring practices, hopefully it's going to benefit all the people who work in the district, the kids, because you're going to be able to hire, people who really want to be here in the community that it's so different from 20 years ago. So that's how I saw it.
Liz?
I just wanted to speak a little more to Miriam's points and just talk about inclusiveness as, a cultural in a cultural context. And this will come up a little bit later when the D&E committee gives its report, but as Jeannie said, the climate survey is really supposed to establish a baseline for us to work with, and I think that that was one of the concerns about having it come out prematurely before it has time to really develop in scope to be an inclusive survey that really engages parents and students from all the schools, because I think the only way we're going to really create an inclusive culture is to start asking that question of everybody about how they feel in terms of their experience in the district, and whether they face any type of identifiable barrier, and if that's active in terms of their experience, or if they have privileges that are also active in their experience. That the survey is intended to bring that out. I just wanted to share one experience that my son had on his baseball team in middle school, where there was a kid who's never played baseball in his life and faces multiple barriers in terms of race and learning. And the coach invited him onto the team, and it was a really new experience for the kids who had always played on teams where all the kids were able-bodied and had played before. And that was, just a very small example that I saw of one person being able to change the culture of the other kids' experience and create a different atmosphere. And so where we need to get to is that that's the norm. And I think starting with a climate survey, that will be a wraparound survey and will really give us a true baseline of where we are, and taking our time to do that right will bring us forward.
Go ahead.
Just a second. Is there anything else?
Kathy, want to?
Yeah, I just would like to have everybody have a chance before. Okay, Mayor. Go ahead.
Kathy, did you want to say
Oh,
something?
I'm sorry. Yes, Kathy.
I just wanted to say that as I was reading Jeannie's report, I noticed how she stuck to our core values. So I want to thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I think that this is probably a bigger discussion than right now, and I'm thinking it should come up in committees. But I want to just address 2 points. One is the issue that, Meredith, I understand what you're saying, but it reminds me a little of trickle-down economics. If we start in one place, everyone will benefit in the end. And the unique thing about disability is there are and disability's been around a long time, the disability movement has been around for a long time. They know a lot. The disability movement has a lot of knowledge and education about inclusion and about, how to approach it. For example, within the curriculum world, there's universal design, which really helps people to understand how to teach different learning abilities. So what I would hate to see is all that expertise being lost in this incredible effort. And I would love to see someone who comes from the disability community, who knows that literature, who's been there, who understands it, to bring that knowledge to this to our efforts here. So that's, that's one piece. And the other thing is that there are some very unique things about the disability community. For example, if we talk about retention and hiring, we talk a lot about how we need to hire diverse people, including people of color, and I'm completely there, 100% on that. And I would love to see a teacher or two with a disability in the schools. That can provide the exact same thing for the students. For all those students with disabilities and those without, it brings a whole measure to, to their learning and to their education. However, to hire someone with a disability is challenging because whether or not you choose to disclose your disability is something that you may or may not want to do. From a legal standpoint, we can't enforce that anyone disclose their disability. So for instance, if we want to attract and retain teachers who might have different disabilities, we need to look at that particular problem. How do we do that? So if we just focus our retention efforts on enlarging the pool in general, we may not be able to get to that. Or if we focused on enlarging the pool of people of color, I think we have a goal for 20% of people of color, which is great. But it would be great if we could say, and maybe 1% of people with disabilities, but we don't know that. So if we want to overcome that hurdle, we have to talk about it and understand it. So that's why I really think it would be great to expand the diversity and equity in a more planful and very sort of deliberate way to include inclusion of people with disability into the entire framework. So that's my thought.
And I just want to clarify, I was not suggesting trickle down or, one group is better than the other group. What I was suggesting is just as you were, that there's a lot to be learned from the process. The experts who are bringing in, diverse hiring, as you suggested, universal design, which is very much, talked about in universities right now, and is also in educational communities, so.
Anything else for Jeannie? I just had one thing that Jeannie had, it's more rhetorical, but I guess I would like you to think about, is, you're saying that this, I guess my understanding would be final sort of at the end of the summer, but making sure that we have a good process for integrating board concerns into the report. Obviously, we've only had a very short time so far to look at it. There will be, I'm sure, much more discussion from the board, whether it's at the committee level or at the board level, and other concerns I think will come forward, and we've already heard some tonight that may want to get incorporated in as well.
Maybe that's a discussion that we could have with Rebecca for the Diversity Equity Committee, because I think that would be, as we move forward and this becomes an annual report, I think that would be important.
Yeah, and I also think we need to remember to, we want to have, we want to take this inclusive view toward all of our discussions within the board, and I think we don't, while diversity and equity is a natural place for things to be, I think the conversations could even be, obviously at, buildings and infrastructure and curriculum as well, just are obvious places where these conversations could have an effect on the report as well.
Can I continue?
Give it to everybody, yeah. Yeah, so why don't you continue? Thanks.
So an update on Partnership for Change. The Partnership for Change has awarded 15 mini-grants over the past 3 months for work in Winooski, Burlington, and collaborative ventures through the Family School Partnership and community-based learning implementation teams. And if you go on the Partnership Vermont, partnershipvt.org website, you can see a longer summary and a list of grantees and the projects that they're working on. Also, under the category of graduate expectations, the Winooski team has finalized the graduate expectations and is moving forward with working on descriptions and assessments during the School Development Institute. And the Burlington team plans to have a finalized draft by by 2 days ago, by this past weekend, and plan to share it out with the Burlington High School faculty on June 13th. Both teams are continuing their work during the week of June 17th at a combined School Development Institute. And the teams and other interested teachers, students, parents, and community members, there are many taking a trip to the Eagle Rock School in Colorado the week of July 16th. It is a school that is it is a year-round school based on proficiency-based education, and it's a site visit to see the proficiencies in action. The YES implementation, the YES pilot, year-end studies, and we have a couple of high school reps here who can also speak to that if they wish, has been a tremendous success so far. Today was the presentation day for the year-end studies projects that were completed. Projects is probably an inadequate term. Many of you may have been on Church Street last week where there was a flash mob. 3 classes from the YES programs put that on. There was an email that went out to the city government today with suggestions on what to do with the city waterfront and what the city can do. There have just been some phenomenal activities done over the last week. One of my favorite quotes on this last week's Commissioner's Corner, I think came from Gretchen Moeller, who said that in the last week, students who used to text at lunchtime about what are you doing after school were now texting about what were you learning in class today. We have had a significantly increased attendance of students. We have had greater engagement and fewer discipline problems of students, which is telling us we're in the right direction as we're moving towards student-centered learning and relevance in education. We do recommend that you check out the Facebook album, which you can get to off of the Burlington School District, Burlington High School website. We were visited by the Nellie Mae Education Foundation, the Annenberg Institute, and EDC. Nick, Eve, can you answer what EDC is? Okay, neither can I. They all did visits and were very impressed by a large leap of faith that the teachers have taken. And we've thought about Already for next year's YES program, we need to think more carefully about student involvement in the planning. In this first year, it was largely teacher planned, and that's because we needed to try it. But we need to make sure that there's student involvement in the planning, parent involvement in the presentations of learning, and our communication strategies around it are all on our site. Any comments or questions about YES or Partnership for Change before I go on?
Yes, sir.
Greg.
Will there be opportunity for students to give feedback to, so that we can improve the program for next year?
Yes.
There was.
Okay.
There was.
There was.
Peter.
Oh, well, I can speak to how much I enjoyed the YES program. Certainly taking finals 4 weeks before school ended instead of 2 weeks certainly took a load off. I mean, usually what you would have is you have AP exams in May, and then finals would be towards the end of June, like this week, or the week before this week. So you'd get these AP exams, which are huge pressure, and then you get finals, you know, which is like essentially AP exam in every class. Well, not quite, but you get the idea. And having this, and you know, you heard about all of these programs that I took science fiction and film, and sort of, we looked at, you know, the implications of race in The Matrix, or what it means to be sentient in Star Trek The Next Generation, or The Island, and stuff like that. And you know, Xander, what was the one you did? Oh, with Terry Buhner and Lisa Gay Timpson, It's Just a War, propaganda in the 1940s about World War II, and what that all the implication was. And it's just, the fact that teachers were doing something that they were interested in, I mean, not to say that they're not interested in the curriculum, but the fact that they're doing something outside of that, you could see how interested and engaged they were, and that really affected how I felt about it and how I saw a lot of other students felt about the YES program. Because, you know, the teachers do teach the same thing year after year, and after 13 years, you know, sometimes teaching that last chapter of AP statistics can get a little bit boring. But seeing them engaged and interested and enthusiastic about all of these broad topics. Erica Lowe did Zombie High School, or no?
It's a great video.
Yeah. So it was just, yeah, I thought it went off well, even though the planning was rough. But yeah.
Linda?
I really enjoyed it. I went today to watch several of the presentations, and my only regret was that we didn't have it set up so that we were videotaping a lot of them, so that we could have shown them not only to Burlington citizens, but around the state, like on Channel 17 or something. Hoping that one of the things we build in for next year is having some of the students really become proficient in using either Channel 17 or RTM's equipment, and really videotaping ongoing, but also the presentations, so that they get to show this, and for people, board members who didn't get to go and so on, because the presentations were quite interesting and quite remarkable, I thought, and worthy of people seeing.
Miriam?
Oh, so I think Emily was first.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going this way. Miriam, please.
Okay. Yeah, I also went today to the YES program, and I would echo everything that was said, but one of the things I saw that was really exciting is one of my concerns is the level of tracking in the high school, and my concern that some children end up being with a limited group of kids in most of the classes where they're really doing their core learning. But what I saw when I went to the different YES programs was a very diverse and integrated group. Kids in every class looked different, had different ideas, had different reasons for being there, and it was really very exciting. So, and I talked to a few students who also mirrored that said they were enjoying being in these classes because they weren't with the kids that they were often with. So I think that's a really nice added benefit.
Emily?
So I feel like I'm going to be a little bit the skeptic in this conversation, but I want to make sure that there's a diversity of viewpoint, and I cannot express how thrilled I am with, I don't know if I would say a majority of the YES programs, but certain YES programs, having been in them, having seen the presentations, I'm absolutely blown away by the way that teachers approached this this opportunity and really thought way outside the box, and then were able to create incredible communities with groups of students in really a short amount of time and do incredible work. But I think there were certainly programs themselves, classes that didn't work. And if it was a few, I wouldn't say it. It's a pilot program. It's the first year. Obviously, there are kinks to be worked out, but I would say I saw a lot of classes where teachers were like, oh, cool, I can teach this subject that I've always wanted to teach in an absolutely traditional sense in the classroom with notes. I mean, maybe not with notes, but like, it's still just gonna be a class. I saw a lot of students not being registered for classes that they had any interest in at all, like really, really widespread. I talked to a lot of kids who just hadn't signed up for anything that they got into, and I think that really crippled a lot of the work, because if the point of YES is to have students taking classes that they're specifically engaged in, then if the registration process doesn't work, the whole thing isn't gonna work. And I'm worried about the feedback forms. I'm worried about the feedback process. I think it's absolutely critical that we get students involved in the planning process next year. The feedback forms were pretty good, but it's over 1,000 3-page handwritten forms for someone to read through and sort through and interpret and analyze, and I don't necessarily trust that that's gonna happen in a way that's really useful. So I think a conversation with students and teachers needs to happen, like a kind of large-scale conversation about what worked and what didn't. So I guess I would say I have a lot of concerns, and I'm really, really excited. I would end on the note that for a pilot year, it was amazing. I saw amazing, amazing work being done, and I was skeptical all through the process, excited but skeptical, and the energy at school today was amazing, like walking through the hallways and seeing teachers and students getting so fired up about the work that they had been doing for the past 2 weeks. So, I don't know, some negative stuff, some positive stuff, a lot going on, but just to make sure that we're balancing out that discussion.
Linda.
To also add on to this, I think some of the results of this we won't see until next fall. Because one of the things that I noticed was kids made friends with kids that they had never seen before. And we're quite intrigued by that. And for the kids, the students here that are going on and are seniors, they won't get to participate. But I will be interested to see what the reaction is to students in the fall when they run into students that they don't normally see and now remember them from this year's YES program and our friends. And I do know that at least in my household, there were kids who made friends with people they really enjoyed and will continue to have contact with. So that'll be interesting to see if that breaks down some of the barriers.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, not in this.
Yeah,
when you're done.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay.
It's back to you.
All right, back to me. Our teacher investigation, I wanted to give an update on that. Oh, I am skipping over the enrollment in kindergarten registration. The packet is in
Okay.
the board. I have
Yep.
no further comment on that. Our investigator, Jim Cronin, has been given the go-ahead from the Burlington Police Department to start the district investigation into the teacher-student relationship. The investigation looks at 2 points. What is the relationship between the teacher and the student, and were any of our policies violated in this relationship, and did district employees comply with Vermont reporting requirements? That's part of the policy question. The interviews have begun. We do not have a timeline. Investigations need to be thorough and often evolve as they go along, so there is no particular timeline, but we have our steering committee, which consists of myself, Nikki Fuller, Jill Evans, Alan Mattson, have met with the attorneys and the investigator, and and we were given updates and will continue to be given updates on a regular basis. And that's really all I can say on that one. Questions?
No.
Okay. The City Committee on Accessibility has begun. Mark Irish, our Co-Director of Facilities, is representing the schools and attended the meeting last week. He was only able to attend part of it because it was the same night as the ITC meeting, and we've asked the city if that could be changed in the future, and they will see what they can do. Miriam Stoll also attended, knowing that Mark was not able to stay, and she volunteered her time. We are scheduling a BHS, Burlington High School Accessibility Tour with the Mayor's Office in early July, with the intention of July 5th. to demonstrate and assess, to both demonstrate the accessibility issues and assess the accessibility issues that exist in our campus, that particular campus. While many of our schools are accessible, with our buildings ranging in age from 50 to 110 years old, they are not all up to date and accessible. Burlington High School and the Edmonds Complex are the most needy at this time. And Burlington High School, just as spread out as it is, it's really in significant need. So that tour is taking place in July.
Peter?
I had a quick question actually about the doors in BHS. I heard back in April, I think, that there were going to be automatic locks installed over vacation. Needless to say, that didn't happen.
I don't recall if it said, Terry, I'm wondering if you could help remember this, or somebody on ITC. I know that we made a report that we'd like to do automatic locks on all the doors at BHS. I don't believe there was funding, however. That's part of our security piece.
Security, we do have a report together, but school by school, that our architects helped fund, and that has been expanded. I hope I'm answering your question, but there's about a $900,000 budget to do all the, if you're talking about security in each one of the sites total.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a huge issue. I mean, with the campus of the high school arranged the way it is, not only did having doors locked all year severely impede the mobility of people who could walk, but also did not have people who are not quite as able-bodied as most of the student population. And not to mention that during the hotter months of the year, walking between buildings was not a entertaining or fun process. So I think that not only would automatic locks help with everyone getting around, but I also think it would be just easier for everyone, considering reduced congestion, hallways and all of that, and it honestly was a pain to have to walk throughout all the walkways to get from, A building to B building. Just, yeah.
Thank you.
There is a plan in fact, there's a contract that was let. Unfortunately, the contractor wasn't able to deliver on what he promised, that dealt with the doors and timers and locks and pass cards for selected students who might have mobility issues. They were supposed to do that during April, but it turned out that the company wasn't up to speed, so we've had to go to a different company, and that will be done this summer, to where the doors will have a timer that will let them out during the passing times and then back on. I think you're aware of how that is set up. So I think that will improve the accessibility issue there.
Thanks. Miriam?
I just wanted to invite all the school board members to come to the tour of the high school, which is going to be on July 5th, either 10 to 11 or 11 to 12. It's going to be a small group of people and 2 students, one current student and one a recent alumni, both of whom have mobility issues. The mayor will be there, and the ADA Accessibility Committee from the city has been working on this, and they really want to invite school board members too, as we embark on any changes that we're going to be doing in the high school in the forthcoming years. It would be really nice for people to have a hand view of this. So,
and that invitation is coming in writing, but hold the date.
Yeah, so I just want to ask people to hold the date if you're interested.
Thank you.
Okay.
Finally, I'd just like to say that you are hiring many faculty and staff tonight, and as I relayed earlier in my superintendent updates, we are disappointed that we were not as successful this year in recruiting a diverse candidate pool. I'm sorry that our folks who were here to advocate for that aren't here for this part of the discussion. We are revisiting our hiring and recruitment procedures, as we do feel that we've taken a step back this year and need to take a much stronger step forward. Variety of reasons, doesn't really matter. The outcome is that we did not have as diverse a candidate pool. We will have a full report on this year's hiring season for you in October per the policy. And as I said, you have a long list tonight. And I do recommend, if the board doesn't meet in July. I know that that's not yet decided, but it often happens, that if there could be authorization for a committee, perhaps finance, to approve hiring through the summer until the next official board meeting, it would help us not delay hiring for folks who are waiting on contracts, because the bulk of it is done now, but it still trickles in throughout the summer.
Okay, any questions on this? On delegating to a committee, since we do have a retreat next Thursday,
I can bring
there will
something
be an
there.
attempt, you know, you certainly could bring, that'll be a warned meeting, you could bring something there, and then I think at that point, we'll have an idea of what the calendar will be and see if we need to do some delegation at that point.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments for Jeannie or anything else at this point on any issue? Yeah, Kathy actually has one thing that sort of fits under this I think you wanted to mention. As she looks at her upside-down computer.
I'd just like to say that Doug Davis in Food Services has won another award, and this was from the Y, and it was because of the impact Food Services had in the areas of youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. So congratulations, Doug.
Great. At this point then, I guess we'd move on. I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. So moved by Kathy Chason. Second? Ben Truman. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to pull out for separate review? Liz?
I'd like to just pull off item 2B to have a brief discussion, clarifications.
So that's item B, the IDEAB funding and the LEA assurances. That will be removed for separate discussion. Any others? Any other comment about the consent agenda?
I'm just curious about 2D. Is that for the entire middle school, or is that just for like one team, is like for Navigator again?
No, it's for 6 through 8.
Oh, entirety of 6th grade.
Paul, did you want to speak to that, or?
It is to finish the middle school, so it's 2 grades. We already have 1 grade done,
So this would be next year's 6th and 8th graders.
7th and 8th.
Because
6th graders are all set.
Next year's 6th and 8th graders, because the 6th graders would not, this year's 6th graders would not be taking their machines with them to 7th grade?
No.
Can you explain, I'm just curious, it seems like if you have been using that machine, why wouldn't you travel with the machine?
There's it'd be a long explanation. There's principals, teams, where teachers are, comfort with the devices, original planning, whether the devices are going to go home. Just a lot of factors went into that.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Now, we would move to item 6B, the IDEAB funding and the LEA assurances. My understanding is we need actually to have a separate motion for this particular item. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Liz Curry moves, second. A second by Kathy Chason. Would the maker of the motion like to, you have any questions?
Yeah, my question is, now we have Dylan's memo, which I don't think we had until yesterday, right? Is that right?
you had, I believe you had it, but you didn't have the numbers filled in, is what I believe.
Oh, I don't remember the memo being available. So, so my question is, he talks about a 6% decrease. And so I just wanted to ask what that dollar figure is and how that factors into, we have an existing deficit, is that right? For fiscal year 14, then what that does to the total deficit.
Okay. Let me start with perhaps just explaining for folks who don't understand what IDEAB is. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. is what IDEA stands for, and B just means that it's the school, there's C is preschool and B is the school year K-12 version of it. And these are the federal funds that we receive each year for special education. When you hear about advocates in special education, myself included, speaking about the need for full funding, which Senator Jeffords based his entire legislative career on, to my great joy. They're really talking about this federal funding for special education, which the initial law said that the federal government will fund 40% of the cost of special education, and they were approaching 18%, and this has cut them back from there. And that's since 1972 or 6, Miriam?
Sure. 2, I think.
2, I think. So it's very discouraging that there is less and less funding. But with sequestration, we did receive a 6% cut. I'm sorry not having the question in advance. I can't give you the exact dollar amount, and David's not here to get that. I can get that to you. But it is a significant dollar amount since we were getting over $1 million. So it is a 6% cut. We needed to go, these funds are used for special education related services, and primarily underwrites our Essential Early Education Program, which is a program for 3 to 5-year-olds identified with special needs, and then some of our related services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, and psychological services. What happens by losing these funds is we have cut everything that we can cut out of the grant, and you cross your fingers. I mean, you build the grant anticipating that you're receiving funds. We did anticipate, in our budget process, some sequestration loss. This is slightly more in this particular grant than we requested. And so if some of these services have to be had, they get shifted to local, but not until then. We don't pre-buy services. So as the population shifts, we will just be closely monitoring what we're spending. In fact, there was a recent special education finance meeting specifically about monitoring our special education budget, and a piece of what we need to monitor is what comes out of this grant. This is a motion that comes to the board every year. The board must pass the motion annually, and we send it in to the state to prove that we have passed it. And if you choose not to pass it, you will not get any of the monies at all listed there.
Can you just clarify a question? Was the amount that is in this motion more or less than what we had anticipated when we were in budget process? And I realize this is non-local budget funding, but...
Right. It is slightly less than we had anticipated.
Okay. Any follow-up or any other further questions?
Just a clarification. Is that money reimbursing for last year, or
No.
This is for the upcoming
Right.
year?
The state special education funding system is a reimbursement system. The federal grant, however, is upfront money. It is our money. If we don't spend it, we can carry it over up to 27 months, but that's it. And then it's gone. So it's an upfront amount of money, but we do figure it into our budget, anticipating what we will get.
Any other further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, the next item on the agenda would be the set of committee reports, beginning with the Finance Committee.
I thought we amended our agenda to discuss the curriculum motion. Where did we put that?
We never ended up amending.
We didn't do that. Okay, sorry. Okay. Finance, you have your minutes in there. Basically, I said I would be short. We received a letter from the state saying that we needed to hire an auditor. You've just done that through the consent agenda. And I think the basic thing is that the Finance Committee is going to be looking at two things immediately. Number one, how we can improve our budget process and involving committees and bringing forward their values in programs so that we have that early in the fall in September. And I'm hoping that committee chairman can have that on your agenda so that rather than the Finance Committee determining the levels of programs or what the program should be, it comes from the committees who've done the work, and then we are given the program parameters and the financial parameters in order to put budget together for you, and we'll be discussing that process as we go through the year. The second point is we have sat down with the Director of Special Services, Special Education Services, and the Chief Financial Officer, and we have gone through a real detailed way of oversight of the special education funding, looking at how we can make sure we are tracking that funding. And as you just heard just now, that funding that we anticipate, we're not getting it all, so we have to look at our overall budget to see where that can be adjusted. So as you heard earlier, we may be saving some money in healthcare, but there are other areas where we're not getting the money that we anticipate, so it's always a juggling act, making sure that we are paying attention and doing the oversight, and that's what the Financial Committee will be doing this year. And that's my report.
And I think it's good to remind folks we are having the the planning retreat next Thursday night. The site will be at Burlington College, and unfortunately Keith won't be able to make it, but Keith's point about committee chairs bringing to the Finance Committee their focus items and potential needs from the Finance Committee should be remembered as we're working to build our calendars. Policy and advocacy, Linda?
Basically, we have sort of gathered some thoughts on making the advocacy part of this committee much stronger. And one of the things we talked about, I'd like to have Miriam, would you mind sharing what you've done down at the south end now that?
Oh, sure. I just had I called it a schmooze. What did I say? What did I call it? Schmooze about schools. There you go. Schmooze about schools on Saturday. And I had it at the bagel shop, and I just put it on Front Porch Forum and had people come and talk to me, and it was really great. So you've been doing that for a while on the north end of the city, so I would like to invite anyone who wants to come join me down at the south end. I don't know if it's going to be a regular thing yet, particularly with the summer, but I was thinking maybe in 2 or 3 weeks I would do it again. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're concerned about becoming much more of an advocacy group in bringing the interesting and exciting things that are happening in the Burlington schools to a forefront. I've also done some chatting with people at Burlington College about whether they would like to work with us on upgrading, some of the stuff on our website, so we maybe can have video, like YouTube kinds of videos of some of the things that are going on. So that's basically what we're up to, and of course we're going to be reviewing the policies.
Thank you. Jill?
Is there any conversation around legislative advocacy?
Yes, but we wanted to expand it above and beyond. Okay. That I think is a given, but the other things hadn't had quite as much attention as we thought maybe they could in the future.
Any other questions for Linda?
Yeah,
Patrick.
I think, answer to your question, Jill, that I think that the kind of the public advocacy is in service to the legislative advocacy by building knowledge and building public understanding of what some of the challenging issues are and what some of the successes we're seeing as a board can leverage that for people to build our support at the legislative side.
Okay. Infrastructure, I think, Keith, were you going to do that as well?
Okay. The ITC committee met because the chairman is out of country. I think the thing to stress here is you've already voted on the motions regarding the technology, and we had an update in ITC on the one-on-one. And I think our major concern is the training, and we're asking for a report on what we've learned last year, and getting a report back on changes that are going to happen, and talking about staff training and use of the tech devices. The thing that we are going to be most interested in comes up throughout the summer and into October is the design plans for Burlington High School, which will take into account the curriculum, security, accessibility that you're talking about, energy efficiency, and we are expecting to get a formal report to the board in October. Currently, right now, David Epstein of, I forgot the architectural firm, it'll come to me.
Are they Truex and Collins?
Truex Collins is working with us, and groups of people have gone out to at least one school in Maine, which unfortunately, the state of Maine paid 80% of the funding for that new school. But it would be, we're working on developing some plans for how we're going to go out to renovate, to redo our high school for the 21st century. When that happens, that will become part of our discussion in the fall. We have another need from ITC. A couple years ago, we were approached by a company called Encore Redevelopment to locate some solar panels on the roofs of CP Smith and BHS. Those solar panels that were located on those two roofs have generated over 224,000 kilowatt hours during the 11th month of operation. And the district gets 10% of the revenue generated, as well as an additional 3% as a security deposit in case there are any issues with having to maintain them. We have earned so far $4,500 in revenue and $1,300 in a security deposit. They would like to locate additional solar panels on the roof of Flynn with the same terms that we've had before that address all of the needs, and there's quite an extensive agreement that you have on board docs for that, and we would like to have that voted on tonight so they can begin the work this summer. Basically, this may not generate a lot of energy for the schools, nor may it generate a lot of revenue, but basically, I think our idea is this is sort of it's the philosophy, the value of the Burlington school system. We want to go to alternative energy, and it's a small way of doing that. So I would make the motion that we accept the agreement, the licensing agreement for solar facilities with Encore Schools, Encore BTV Schools Solar Limited.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Evans. Is there any discussion of this motion? Liz?
That's exciting to hear, Keith. I guess it was probably a discussion from the previous subcommittee because I have been at the past two and that has not come up.
You're absolutely right, and I apologize for that, Liz. This just came up this week. It was discussed when we approved it for, I don't know, over a year ago, and it was, if you prefer to go back to committee, we can do that, but in order to facilitate this to happen, I wanted to make sure we got it before the full board so that we could have it this summer. And I would ask Paul if there are any questions to talk to it more, if you like.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So this is something I'm slightly familiar with, and I would express concerns about the revenue only being 10% and would ask if there was a discussion about going out to bid, when you went out to bid, because the industry has changed, and when you went out to bid, what the proposals were for the revenue, and that would be my first question, and then my follow-up question would be, if we went out to bid quite a while ago, I would recommend going out to bid again to increase the revenue, because I think 10% as an industry standard these days is low.
Paul, could you?
I'll do the best I can. We did this in October 2011, and this was a collaborative effort between Encore and BED for the purchase and Gross Solar for the panels. There wasn't a bidding process. This was they came to us as a partnership arrangement to use our roofs for licensing. Harry, can you help me out with that?
Also, as a component of the Burlington Electric Department, they were represented in this group too. And there was a special agreement for Public Service Board for doing this type of thing, as I recall, in the part of it. And Flynn was a part of the original agreement, so this is just an extension of what they were doing. The only reason that we couldn't do Flynn is because of construction. We had to get the roof done with part of that work, so that's why it was delayed, so that it was a part of coming up. They bear all of the costs and responsibilities and so forth. It's just using the public space of the area. The electricity isn't actually, it's put back into the grid system, but it's not actually used on site where you generate it. So that was my understanding of it. It was flushed out and more thoroughly examined some time ago. I guess it's been almost 2 years.
The other thing, just to be clear, it's not 10% of their profit. It's 10% of the gross electrical revenue. They have all of the debt service and other stuff on their side of it.
Did you have any follow-up?
Well, I would just request that it go back to committee. I mean, the nice thing about these opportunities is that as the industry gets smarter and develops, there's more competition, and I think there may be an opportunity to maximize the revenue if we did go out to bid. My employer's doing this now, so I have access to some resources and the ability to see a live bid. But I personally have not been in favor of passing this tonight for $4,500.
I actually have a point of order question. Did we, I know this was part of a larger proposal that was made to us almost 2 years ago now. And at that point in time, we did not approve Flynn at that time, and we only approved the other sites? Is that why we're needing to come back for an additional approval now?
Well, it was these are, and again, this is all, I haven't read what, the recent thing, but in effect, this is a special window that's allowed by the Public Service Board where there is some type of special arrangement that they're allowing for the financing of this, or that they get a allowance for the rate for buyback. This isn't an ongoing type thing. So basically, if you don't want to enter into it, this is the opportunity to pass. I mean, in other words, the time limit, as I understand it, there's a window here that that has to be met by a certain time for them to have everything in place, or else whatever certificate of public need or public good is gone. So as I understand it.
This, effectively has come directly to the board. It was part of a larger arrangement, and yet it does need a separate approval, I guess. Rebecca.
I agree with Liz that it should go back to committee, and I understand that there's a potential window that's closing, but there are plenty of other possibilities of folks who would happily bid on a similar setup with potentially more benefit to the district.
Keith?
Interestingly enough, I'm currently going through the process of trying to put solar panels on my garage, and I don't get payback for 10 years. And I have to pay it all up front, so I know 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's going to take me 10 years to get any kind of money back. And number two, I will get that back because there is this window of benefits which are going away, credits. So it may not sound like a lot of money, and it wasn't when we did this. We were talking. It wasn't that it was to be a money revenue source. It was sort of to start the process of using alternative energy. So I don't know that we can do any better, but I know that I'm not in my private life.
There is a motion on the floor to approve this license agreement. Obviously, there has been some discussion in opposition. I think that Aaron, did you want to say something?
Sorry, just a question. So is it out, has it been stated already that if we don't approve it tonight, they're done with us? And
They
that
won't
was
be able to
set?
do it in time.
I'm sorry.
They have a deadline to keep their grant, and that closes July 23rd. They've been working with the contractors to make sure that they can get all of the stuff put together. In the transition of a couple of positions, our property services director, the contracting process sort of got dropped. We would have had more time to do that, but it just came up to my attention 3 days ago.
Okay, but we do have until July 23rd.
They have to have it completed.
Oh, the project completed?
It takes about 4 or 5 days to put it up. It doesn't take a lot of time to put these up.
Okay.
But they were planning on starting June 17th and completing by the 23rd, or they lose their grant.
Okay, but have they said they will walk if we don't sign off on it tonight? I mean, is there a chance for some negotiations? I mean, I'd hate to just sign off on this, and as Liz was saying, if there is a chance for negotiations, unless they've said to us, we will walk if you do not pass this tonight. And it sounds as though that hasn't been said.
I think we've had a year of good experience with this group. We're not talking about much. It's less than 1/100th of 1% of the school budget. We're not doing it for revenue. We could spend a lot of time doing this and bidding and everything else. We've got a company we've got a track record with, so if we said, if it got pushed out after tonight, I'm not sure what they would do.
Ben's next.
I've got some other questions about it. It sounds like there's some information with, we're drilling down a little bit more, but I'm going to move that we table this, as opposed to send it back to committee offhand, since we are having this meeting on next Thursday, and perhaps there's an opportunity to get some more information, and then if that's satisfactory to the board, it can act on it, or at that time, move it back to committee, or take whatever other action it would like.
Greg, are you seconding?
No, I have a question.
Well, there's a motion on the table, right? There's a motion to table the, and seconded by Kathy. Did you have a question then?
Negative.
Not on the motion to table. Okay.
Can you define for me what tabling it exactly means?
Basically, not exactly. I can't exactly say, but tabling the motion would take the motion off being active right now. And basically, we would then go back and ask for further information, and the motion could be brought forward. Again, we will be having a warned meeting next Thursday, would be the earliest time that it could come back to the full board.
Who would bring the information?
I mean, I think that we've had a good number of questions that we've had tonight. It would have to come back from the administration, because effectively this did not come through committee, and there seems, there have been some questions about timing and everything like that. I think there's also a certain amount of information of what our relationship has been with this particular group going back 2 years that should be brought forward as well. So any further discussion on the motion to table?
I guess I just have a question.
Sorry.
I mean, there may not be an answer to this question, but if we table it, act next Thursday as a full board to vote, is that enough time for them to act if we decide to move forward?
Unfortunately, right now, the administration can't answer that question.
I don't believe so. I'll say that. I don't believe there's enough time. And we have a 20-year agreement with them for our other 2 buildings as well. These aren't short-term processes. I understand the last-minute nature of it, but I can be clear. They may say, well, I'm sorry, their timeline is not going to be met. So that's my concern.
Okay, I mean, I think that's been pointed out. Greg.
Terry, I believe you said that we might have a problem with the Public Service Board and the Certificate of Public Good. We don't want to lose that.
This company was completely flushed out. Bernie O'Rourke was here. He would tell you, they came and spent a number of hours at the ITC meeting way early on, and Chris Yard, who was our property service director, we looked into this and what it meant, and it was more about giving back solar power or starting this was a kind of, as I understood it, it was an opportunity related to something the Public Service Board's done. This isn't just something you go shopping for, or that you it was in the earlier stages, and Flynn was definitely part of the original discussion, but we said we couldn't do that because we delayed the construction of the roof until we did the whole transformation about it. We also did this with our legal counsel. They reviewed the lease, put the safeguards in there, the backup, the insurance, all the things in case something went wrong with their installation, something going wrong with the roofs and all that kind of stuff. As I recall, this was more than just somebody dropping in on us. Now, they never came to the full board before, but it was all handled through the ITC committee. And I do believe due diligence was done. The concept of whether or not we were going to make a huge sum of money over 15, for the 20-year plan, that really wasn't the element. As I recall, we said we thought this was showing good faith effort to be green. That was what started doing it. They seem to be a reputable Burlington company. I mean, they are located right downtown someplace. Again, I wasn't in on this recent conversation because I did sort of pass that on, and I think they may have gotten behind the 8 ball of getting this done at this moment in time. It's fine if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but I would have to say that it's pretty much you've cut it off. It isn't going to happen. So we will can move forward and try with somebody else, or get them to resubmit, or get them to come back to ITC and flush it out further. But I think that this opportunity will be gone. I mean, that's my best guess right now, and I'm looking at Paul he has some of the contract. There is a window here that will shut out, right?
Yeah, and I guess I want to make a comment because there have been very few people who are on the board through this entire process. We did reach an agreement with this organization a while back. We do have to have another vote with them that has come up in a very fast, very quick time frame. We had agreed on contract terms with this group a while back. Flynn had been part of the original picture, but it wasn't able to be done. That's why I asked the question procedurally if we actually even needed to make a vote on this at this point. But I think the fact that they have come back so late, I don't think it acknowledges the reality of what we have to deal with as well, though. And so that was, I think there's a two-way pull here on this. So, Ben?
Well, at this point, it sounds like the point of my looking to table it to get more information for us for Thursday is not relevant. So I'm going to withdraw the motion with permission of the seconder.
Okay, the motion to table has been withdrawn. The motion on the table then currently is for the, just for the contract for Flynn. Is there any further discussion? Given the debate, I would actually like to have a show of hands of all in favor of this motion. Please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, and both. Can we just raise hands again, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm the 7th vote. I have not voted. In this case, I will actually vote for the motion, given what I know of the history. So the motion does pass 7-6 with both student representatives voting for the motion. ITC, did you have anything else, Keith?
We are going to be meeting in July and August, the first Tuesday at 5:30.
Sorry, I was actually looking at my agenda. When did you say your next meeting is?
Our first Tuesday of each month in July and August.
You will be doing July, okay.
And our agendas are written on our minutes.
Great,
We
thank you.
expect some reports next time.
Okay.
And I certainly will not bring a motion like this again.
I
appreciate the support.
Bernie's not allowed
Yeah,
to go out of town.
we'll tell Bernie of that when you come back. Curriculum Committee.
So, most of our stuff's in the minutes, so I'm not going to go over what's in the minutes, other than to say that we had a really engaging discussion about the possibility of looking at a science, technology, magnet school, engineering, mathematics, STEM, all sorts of different ways you can break that acronym down. And it's an ongoing conversation that we're going to have. I know, thanks to the Alert Now call that I received from Jeannie as I was walking out the door to come here, that there's going to be a random survey that's going to start tomorrow, and trying to address some of the questions that we brought up about what's the community need for it, what's the relevance, variety of things. But and it's an ongoing discussion that we're going to continue to have. In the interest of efficiency and time, though, I do, because this could be, hopefully this will be a quick discussion, but I can't promise it. But there was an emotion that came out of the Curriculum Committee to amend the 2013-14 school calendar, basically to move it back to the calendar, to reflect something that would be the calendar that's been going on maybe for 100 years, is what we've been hearing.
In Vermont legislature, not just Burlington.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the motion out, make a motion, and then speak to it after the motion, assuming a second, that we would amend the 13-14 school year calendar to make, as it reads on the agenda, to make October 16th a half-day for students, October 17th a parent-teacher conference day, October 18th a vacation day for parents, or for students and teachers, and adjust the calendar to add June 11th as the final day of 177 student days.
Is there a second? Aaron?
Can I speak to it?
Yes.
So this did not come out with overwhelming support from our committee, and I want to make sure that that's clear, but I'm bringing it forward. And let me just explain real quickly what this change would be. Historically, looking at that third full week of October, the Wednesday has been a half day for students, with the afternoon being student-teacher conference, parent-teacher conferences. Thursday has been a day for parent-teacher conferences, and the Friday has been a fall break day for everybody. The calendar that was proposed this year instead has the 17th as a half day for, with the afternoon for, a half day for students, with the afternoon for student-teacher conferences, student-parent conferences, and then with a professional development day on the 18th of October, but not an actual vacation day for teachers. Bob Abbey came to our meeting and was speaking in favor of it and coming out with basically universal support for instituting that day back as a day off, that 18th as a day off. He made the case that that's a good time, 6 weeks or so into the school year, 7 weeks into the school year, for teachers to get a break, to get a rest, to kind of figure out exactly what they have going on in the class and come back fresh on that Monday, looking at the challenges and the abilities of the class and being able to kind of retool. And also that for students, that a little bit of a shorter week there is a break and a rest for them, and after a lengthy period of without any breaks in the school year, one of the longest periods of the year. I think I would say that some of the pushback against making this change in the calendar, reverting back to the previous calendar, has been driven by the fact that these Wednesday afternoon early release for professional development days puts an increased burden on parents, and that this would be another day that parents would be responsible for coming up with some sort of coverage for their kids, particularly their K-5 students, and that just may be too much to ask of parents. I would also say, and this gets where I have a calendar in front of me, so this makes sense. Everyone else may not have a calendar in front of them. We're really looking at only removing a half day of, roughly a half day of student instruction, because Wednesday, the 16th, and the current calendar, assuming the adoption of the professional learning community early release days, would be an early release day. So, and then that Thursday, the 17th, would be a half day for students. So the actual number of student hours out of school by this change would be limited, but it would certainly have an additional burden on parents. I'll stop at that point.
Meredith.
I also think it would be helpful to clarify how this change came about, because from what I understand, it wasn't part of the discussion on the curriculum committee. And I think this discussion sort of began with the prior board and the prior curriculum committee. And it began at a meeting where Jeannie was out of town on business. And we started to discuss this issue, not fully understanding the impact or not having teachers and administration really weighing in about it. And then it went to the full board, which is the previous board. And I remember I personally felt a lot of pressure to get the calendar voted on, because parents and teachers rely on knowing when the last day of school is, when it starts and that. But at the full board meeting, I seem to recall Patrick, myself, maybe Jeannie, having this discussion at the full board meeting about how we needed to go back to the teachers and ask them to weigh in. And so it wasn't that Bob Abbey just showed up on a whim. We actually had asked him to come back and speak to this. And I think we had concerns about changing something that had been in existence for 100 years, just without having the people who were affected weigh in about it. So I just think it was a discussion of the previous board. Now we have a new board, so it's kind of caught up in the middle here, so.
Liz.
I have two clarification questions. So I'm looking at the October 2013 calendar. What I'm confused about is when you're using the language early release days, are you suggesting that the committee supported making October 16th a half day at noon, or are you calling a PLC day an early release day? That's my first question.
Yeah, and you're right, it's kind of confusing. So the motion is to make the 16th a half day.
At noon.
At noon or 11,
Whatever.
I don't know, 11:30. I'm not sure exactly what the release time is.
Okay.
Varies by grade.
I'm sorry?
It varies by grade.
It varies by grade, it varies by
Because of
school.
transportation.
Right, so.
Okay.
So that it would be a half day for students.
Okay.
Then the 17th would be no school
No
for
school.
students. The 18th would be no school for students.
Okay.
Or teachers. The 17th would be a professional development day. I guess it would be a parent-teacher conference day. If the motion on the floor right now does not pass, the 16th would be an early release day, a PLC day, which would be 1:20, 1:30. I don't know what time the release is at that point.
1:50.
1:50, as opposed to 11:30 or 12 o'clock.
Right.
The 17th would then be, on the current calendar, would be a 11:30, 12 o'clock half day for students. And the 18th would be no school for students, but it would be a work day, a contract day for teachers.
For conferences.
For conferences.
So I have a follow-up question, and then I have a suggestion, or I guess another question. So the 18th has always been referred to as in-service professional development or training day. And then the teachers referred to it as a day off. So I'm confused why it's called a training day, and the teachers are calling it a day off.
Okay, so On the calendar right now, the 18th reads an in-service professional development or training day, which would be a parent-teacher conference day. That's how the 2013 calendar currently reads. The revised calendar would effectively make the 16th an early release day, the 17th an in-service professional development or training day, and the 18th a holiday and or vacation for teachers and students. So what would, if you, I'm looking at the calendar here from the school. Wednesday would become orange, Friday would become blue, Friday would become green.
Okay. Could I add to that? The history in Vermont is there what's traditionally been called the Vermont NEA Days. The Vermont National Education Association, the Vermont chapter, for 100 years ago, had written into legislature that there would be 2 days in mid-October, mid to late October, for statewide professional development, and Vermont NEA put that on. In recent years, attendance at that professional development has significantly decreased to the point where, while it's still on the books, Vermont NEA has not hosted it, and several districts around the state have chosen to reclaim those days as parent conference days or whatever. What we have done for the last, I can't tell you exactly, 1 or 2 years, is we have had Wednesday early release parent conference, Thursday parent conference, Friday holiday. And then in looking at next year's calendar, as Meredith said at the February Curriculum Committee meeting, there was discussion about whether or not to continue that Friday holiday or just push everything back.
So then my third and final question is, did the committee talk about doing Thursday and half of Friday as the parent-teacher conferences and having Friday afternoon off?
Can I comment on that? I can't say that the committee did no, but it doesn't quite work that way. By, it's, first of all, it's not, are you saying like all day Thursday and half day Friday?
Well, it's my understanding that parent-teacher conferences require a day and a half. Is that right?
At least a day and a half. And we crammed to get, I mean, we've had nearly 100% attendance in our K-8 conferences for the last couple of years, and the 6, 7, 8 is really difficult to get that in there.
But it happens a day and a half if you do half day, 16th and the 17th. So a day and a half is a day and a half.
Right, and the way it happens, what ends up happening is that, and the master agreement allows for this, individual schools can choose to do it differently. So for example, they'll hold conferences on Wednesday night, or Thursday will be a long night, and then they'll probably do a half day on Friday. And that can be an individual school decision at the moment, according to our master agreement. But I think the answer is no, it wasn't discussed that way.
I was one of the people in the curriculum committee who wasn't supportive of the motion, so if I can just speak for a moment to my opinion and why I came down that way. So I think everything that we know about what's good for kids is more time with teachers is good for kids. And we know that what's good for teachers is time with other teachers. And providing this vacation day in the middle of October, which is essentially what we're doing, does neither of those things. And in addition, it creates trouble for families. It makes, just another day where you have to scramble and get childcare. So I think in that respect, it's sort of, although it's different than what we've been doing before, and it's not perhaps what the teachers would like, I think it's the right move to make because it's best for kids and families. So that's where I came down.
Erin and then Keith.
So I was, do I need this? So I was the one who made the motion at the curriculum committee meeting that we had, and it was based mainly from Bob Abbey's perspective after surveying the teachers. I understand that students, seat time is important, professional development is important, but also a day of, taking a breath after meeting with, in Burlington, it's very impressive, the fact that we have almost 100% turnout for parent-teacher conferences. I think having that day, and Patrick has said this before, making doctor's appointments, going to the bank, it is a long time, and as a teacher, it is nice to have a breather. And one of the points that Bob brought up was that teachers need that day to, and some of them might not even be taking it off. It might be that they're planning for Monday, after having sort of a rush hour of parent-teacher conferences, getting kids in and out, and I speak as a high school teacher, and I understand it's much different at the high school level. But for middle school, elementary and middle school, I mean, that's a pretty hefty week to take on. And so to have that Friday to maybe either plan, prepare for Monday, schedule some appointments, I think it's important for teachers to have that. A tired teacher is not a good teacher, and I'm tired all the time, and I am a good teacher, but so maybe I'm contradicting myself. But, I think it's something that we owe to the teachers in our district. It's something that they have spoken in huge support of. We don't ask their opinion about many things, and as I said in the curriculum committee meeting, if you tell teachers they need to be there on Friday, they'll be there on Friday. There's no question about it. So I think we could go either way, but to keep morale up, which is also important, I'm sure many of you work in jobs where if the morale is low, nothing really gets done. So, my take on it was I made this motion as a way to not keep tradition, but if this has been going on for 100 years, parents are pretty aware of what they need to do this week in October. And of course, I'm not a parent yet. I may have different opinions in a few years about how childcare works, but it's no secret that on October, that Friday, they need to find childcare. So, it's not something that we're springing or we're making major changes to, and so I just saw it as a way to keep everyone happy and really just provide a day where we can breathe. So that's why I did it. And Bob Abbey made a very strong case for it. And I'm not sure the teachers really need to. I think they're welcome to just tell us how they feel about it. So,
Keith?
I think that when the teachers were thinking about that day, the idea of released Wednesday afternoons for professional learning communities hadn't really gotten into the head about how they could be planning and working with their students. It may be 100 years that we've had that day off, but it's also been 100 years where people are saying that October is a heck of a month to teach in because it's so broken up. There's kneecap tests the week before, and that breaks up everything. And then you have half a week. It really stops the momentum that kids are beginning to build up. And I'm also thinking that our demographics are changing in Burlington, and where it might have been good for a lot of families who could afford to go away, take a break, go off, fly away someplace. That's not the reality today. And so I'm thinking that this really breaks up the children's learning. The teachers are working on their planning with the PLCs. I think that for the sake of our children's learning and for our parents, that I think that we can make the change and say that they go to school all day Tuesday, up until 10 minutes to 2 on Wednesday, that's what they're used to because of release time for PLCs, half a day on Thursday, then parent conferences can be on Thursday afternoon. Some teachers who really want to go away will make the effort to have their parent conferences on other times and schedule that are more convenient for their parents. So I think it's time to make the change, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Greg, and then Rebecca.
I've been to 2 PTOs now, and let me tell you, the first one, there was anger. And it stemmed from the PLCs, not because of the concept of the PLC, but the fact that this is being thrust on parents, and they had planned for it, and now there's a change. I'm very sympathetic to the teachers that this has got to be a burnout week, and I can see them wanting to take Friday off. My problem is we've put this schedule out, and parents do rely on this schedule, and they make plans. And I work for a large company, and we've got a lot of parents with young kids, and scheduling daycare for when school closes is a challenge. So we've put this schedule out there. It was voted on. parents have planned for it, and I think we need to stick with it, and I can't support this motion.
Back.
I think, a lot of my thoughts have already been spoken to. I think, yes, the calendar is out already and parents start to make plans accordingly, and I fully understand the effort that has to go in to get parent-teacher conferences done for teachers. But kids need to be in school, and both for the kids' education and for parents who are working, it's a step backwards, so I'm not in favor of the motion either.
Peter?
Speaking to what Keith was talking about, what with kneecaps and then the PLCs immediately following that, even with the new schedule, you're still breaking up the week. When you have that 1:50 exit on Wednesday and the half day on Thursday, you're still breaking up that week. It's still like only half a week. So the qualitative difference between having the old schedule and the new schedule, I don't think is that significant for the students. I think coming from the teacher's perspective, having that Friday off, especially after the momentum has been disrupted by kneecaps, I think that's really useful for planning and organizing and figuring out how to really get back into gear after kneecaps have, sort of thrown a wrench into the cogs. I can't speak to the effectiveness of a day going to 150 since I don't think I've ever had one. But it just seems as though the difference between the new schedule and the old schedule isn't that significant, and the opinions about which is better and which is more utile for certain groups seems to be pretty much split, as far as I can tell.
Miriam?
One more comment. I think when we talked about this in the curriculum committee, and then we layered on top of it the comments about the PLCs, that was difficult, and I don't want to go into that now, but my understanding is that if we switch to, if this motion passes, then the conferences would be done Wednesday afternoon and Thursday. Is that correct?
Yes.
And therefore, the Wednesday time, which would have been PLC that week, would now become teacher conferences. So in my mind, that's yet again, assuming PLCs happen, we're taking away that valuable teacher-to-teacher time. So again, I think I understand what you're saying, but I think the use of the time is the critical thing, not just the fact that it's not in school time.
Patrick?
I tried to present this motion fairly dispassionately, and I'm going to put on my teacher hat though for a second. And I really don't think people who don't spend their lives in school every day understand how much teachers and students, and I would actually argue that this is better for students as well to have this short week, rely on that short week as a time to relax, as a time to let that go. I'm not going to get too far in a soapbox, but I really challenge folks that aren't classroom teachers to spend a week with a classroom teacher and realize what it's like to not be allowed ever to show up late for work, not to be allowed ever to leave late for work, not to be able to go to the bathroom when you want to, not to be able to be back 3 minutes late from lunch because you have students there and you're actually in a liability situation in that case. And you would be going 3 straight months without the chance for a day off and without taking a personal day out of your own time. That's a long time. And and that doesn't mean that aren't other people that don't have that same situation. I get that. But that's also 3 straight months without, I'm just going to show up at 9:30 and stay till 4:30 or 6:30 that day. That's not an option that teachers have. And to have a day of, and students, it's not an option that students have. And I think that the realities of school might not be fully recognized by the folks that are sitting here. And I'm very, very strongly in favor of this. I agree it's a burden on families. I don't think it's an overwhelming burden on families. And I think that all of the other PLC days, missing a couple hours of that PLC time on one of those days is worth it. And finally, I'm looking at some other calendars, other SU calendars, and it's marked as, the 18th is marked as a regional day for no school for anyone. And so we would be, I don't want to say the only, one of the few places that are actually in school that day. Granted, we're also one of the only place that has the PLC days that are going at the same time.
Emily?
I just want to second what Patrick has said, that so that it's not just the two teacher voices who are strongly in favor of making teacher lives easier in any way that we possibly can. But I think you guys do the hardest job there is, and I would second what you had said as well, that a tired teacher is not a great teacher, or a frustrated teacher, or an overwhelmed, and that's often true anyway, but if we can give you guys a day, I think that's really, really worth it.
Is there any further discussion?
I was a middle school.
Seeing none, once
Wait,
again, I guess
wait.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, yes, Liz.
Is that all right? I'm not sure how to do this, because I know there's a motion on the table and there's a second. I'm offering a friendly amendment that we look at a day and a half with Friday afternoon off as a compromise. I feel like teachers are going to we're asking teachers to get used to schedule shifts, and this is a very incremental schedule shift. So it's a way of kind of moving into that conversation, and am sympathetic to the request. I am just coming down on the side of, the PLC is already an early release, and there may be an opportunity here to kind of split the difference. So if that's not friendly, I guess.
I guess I would ask, is it friendly or?
Do I have to speak to it?
The person who made the motion.
No, Patrick made the motion.
No, Patrick made the motion.
Oh, the motion here.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
motion from committee doesn't.
And then the second has to agree.
I got you.
In my opinion, I think that would be a second discussion, and I think
So that's an amended.
I think it's.
It would be a pure amendment. Are you making that as amendment then to the motion?
I am, but if it's not friendly, doesn't it have to be accepted?
No, you would have to make you'd make an amendment, then you propose an amendment. You
Oh.
make a motion for it to amend.
Got it.
It to be.
Motion to amend.
Okay,
to
and then you'll need
consider
a
the-
second. So in your amendment is to make it what?
Thursday and Friday morning, parent-teacher conferences, Friday afternoon off for the teachers.
I'm sorry, please say that again.
Thursday and Friday morning are a day and a half of parent-teacher conferences. Friday afternoon is off for the teachers.
So you're saying Thursday with no student, would be a no student day?
No, parent-teacher conferences.
But no students on Thursday?
Right, like it is now. No school Thursday.
I've got
half day from the 16th to the 18th.
Okay, well, I'll comment on
Yeah.
that after it goes through its process.
So that means,
Wait a second, wait, please. There's no second for this motion yet? Is there a second for the motion? Seconded by Joe. Then we have open for debate.
I think there might be I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Just one thing, a point of order. Are we now short a half a day, by the way?
Yes.
You mean over the
that's
course
what
of
he
the
was
year?
trying to say.
Yeah, over the course of the year, because the other motion adds a day back at the end of the year.
So it has to complete the motion, adding a half day back at the end of the year.
The end of the,
That's, right now, it's, the current motion has June 11th as a full day. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, you would have to have June 11th as a full day of school if we were to go with this, because the 17th of October being a half day for student counts as a student attendance day, turning the 17th of October into a parent-teacher conference day with no students means it's not a count day, and we would then have to have the 11th still as that.
As a full.
as a full
Okay.
day, or at least, yeah.
you'd have to add a.
Yeah, right, okay. So would you just want to keep June 11th then as a full day? I guess that would have to be part of it to make the
But
calendar
we
work.
can't
If I
do,
may,
that
is
won't work,
June-
right?
No, you'd have to add another day. June 11th as a current half-day already counts as a day.
Yeah, I got you.
You'd have to go to June 12th.
Right. Okay, I'll withdraw the motion because probably violates the contract.
Because you
It doesn't.
have planned your vacation.
No, not at all.
It doesn't violate anything, it's just a reality.
It says adding another day on top of the June 11th day that has to be added. So I'll withdraw the amendment.
It would add another date on top of the.
June 11th.
The June 11th would take care of that day. You would still have to have the June 11th day.
Yeah, that's what I would just
But
clarify.
it would add another contract day for teachers that's not in the,
No, we would take it out of
okay, or it'd be.
something else.
Okay.
We cannot add another contract date.
Can't add a contract day.
Yeah, I know.
So at the,
17th and 18th
so
would count as
are
a
you,
contract day, and
let me
11th
just say, do we leave this on the table?
I've withdrawn it.
Okay. So the motion on the table is the motion that was offered by Patrick from the committee to amend the calendar. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to take, once again, vote by hand. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
What are we voting on?
We are voting on the motion, sorry, we are voting on the motion that came out of committee, that's on board docs, to amend the calendar to make October 16th a half-day for students, 17th a parent-teacher conference day, and October 18th a vacation day, and adjust the calendar to add June 11 as the final day of 177 student days. Yep, that's appropriate. Okay, so all in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and both students. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the motion carries 7-5 with both students voting in favor.
No, it doesn't carry.
Fails, I'm sorry, fails. Sorry. No, and basically, I feel as chair,
It's your call.
yeah, I can or cannot vote is kind of to me, and I tend not to unless it's, unless it would make a difference. I did not weigh in on the debate either, or try not to. Anything else from curriculum?
No.
Then at this point, I guess it would be diversity and equity. Rebecca?
Yeah, I will be quick, because I promise. I would encourage folks to certainly read the minutes, in particular, the reports from Sparks and Linda and Nikki. There was some frustration shared by both the committee and the folks from the advisory committee regarding the delay and the climate survey based on the timing. The expectation based on the charge of that committee was that it would come to diversity and equity before it was released, and for a variety of variables, including Dan's death, that was not possible until the May meeting, and at that point, there were questions that came from the committee that were unable to be answered outside of committee in time for the survey to go out. But it means that in the fall, when that survey is ready to go out, it will be in its comprehensive form as intended, which is students, parents, and faculty, and ideally high school and middle school. It would be nice if it got a little bigger than that, but we'll see how that goes. And then a long conversation that brought us to have to table a number of items, but a long discussion about what the charge of the advisory committee should be and who are they advising and what is the committee's response to it, which is going to move along to our June meeting with hopefully some resolution. That's it.
Any questions for Rebecca? Seeing none at this point, I would entertain a motion for the board to go into executive session. Keith?
I move to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, negotiations, and a real estate matter where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage.
Just one point of clarification before I ask for a second. Were there going to be two personnel matters? I don't know that there necessarily was. Joe?
I have a personnel matter relating to a teacher in the district. If there's, I don't know whether.
I'm just reading from the motion on the
Yeah,
board docs. I
yeah.
don't know.
I can clarify. Jeannie and I spoke just before the meeting about
Yeah.
a question about a personnel matter that was on consent agenda. And she agreed that though we were,
Okay, so I think that the wording should be personnel matters.
Personnel matters then.
Okay, so motion, is there a second? Second by Linda. So the motion on the table is to consider an executive session to discuss personnel matters, negotiations, and a real estate matter where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, my understanding is that for executive session, basically we just clear the building. Is that correct? And we use this space?